Welcome to Gregorian Chat. Welcome. Hello. I can't play and do it at the same time. Welcome to Gregorian Chat.
Hi guys.
Man, this is only our second podcast of the year. Would you believe that?
Yeah, it's mental.
And we are sorry that is the case, but life has just been mental, as Dom said.
It has been a bit crazy since we got started. I mean, for starters, Dom's no longer a chaplain.
Oh, that's very sad.
We got a new chaplain
Yes.
called Shana Lorando.
I think it's Urando, right?
Urando? No, I'm pretty sure it's Lorando.
I'm pretty sure. But anyway, Shana Urando Bloom is going to be coming onto the podcast.
Yes, she's going to be helping out with it a bit because Dom is now a teacher.
I'm a teacher of people.
Secondary teacher.
Well, that's the thing. Being called a secondary teacher is like, you're not the most important kind. You know?
Yeah.
You're
Primarily,
not a primary teacher.
Primarily, you're a secondary teacher.
Yeah. I can't even think of a tertiary joke. It's just such a niche word. But yeah, so I'm a teacher. It's been heaps of fun, lots of stuff to learn. But unfortunately, I just don't have as much time as I would like to film these podcasts.
No, yeah, it's a lot of work being a teacher.
That's right. But we will be getting Shana. She has a wealth of knowledge,
Yes.
and she's a female.
And she's a
And
female.
that's just something that we could never do.
We're never female. We're never
We're never
females.
females, and
Ever.
I'm so grateful for that.
Yeah.
Just because it would be confusing. It's not bad to be a female.
So
Dabbing at the
far.
next door neighbours.
Yeah.
But yeah, welcome to this episode. What are we talking about today, Dom?
We are talking about reverse racism. Is reverse racism a thing? So we're going to be delving into that. It's a bit controversial.
Just a bit.
I think it's, we like being a bit controversial.
Talk a little bit about white privilege. And you might be thinking, okay, well, what's the point in watching a podcast about reverse racism and white privilege given by two white guys? If you're thinking that, then maybe you're part of the problem.
Maybe,
No, kidding. Hey, I like that teapot.
Yes, it's a very good teapot, and it's filled with something that smells delicious called monk pear tea.
Man, monk pear, as
monk
in
pear.
like would it be like a monastic pear? That's basically what they're saying, right?
It's just more than one monk, really. It's two monks.
Monk Demetus.
A pair of monks.
What have you been up to lately, Dom?
Well,
You've been studying chaplaincy.
getting back at the chaplaincy,
Yeah.
starting up with the new team. Well, so Olivia's still here, Father Chris is still there, and we've got Shana on board. So Father Chris had his gallbladder taken out.
It sounds ruthless, eh?
It sounds pretty horrible.
What was the full term he used? A gangrenous
He had
gallbladder.
a gangrenous gallbladder.
I actually heard that. I was like, I can't think of anything worse.
No.
That sounds like an insult. You gangrenous gallbladder.
Yeah, definitely using that. Well, just gangrenous
But anyway,
is a good word. Anyway, so
just
he
the fact that
he
when
was
you think
away
about
for a
it,
while. So he's just getting back to work after having some R&R, and so we went on a bit of a retreat. We decided we went to learn about iconography from Mike Pavan. Went to the Mara Seminary to talk to Father Chris Skinner, and went to CDC's new location in Pukekohe.
Catholic Discipleship College, that is.
Good
to
place.
plebeians.
Good place.
Yeah, so they've got some new digs, which is in an old convent, right?
Yes, yeah,
Pretty
converted to an
dope.
old convent. It is a good place. It's a good place. So yeah, I've been pretty busy just doing all sort of that and getting back into the year. Quite excited.
Brilliant.
But yeah, should we crack on with this?
Yeah, let's crack
topic?
on. Don't worry about what I've been up to.
Well, you've started a new school.
Okay.
I thought
Yeah, we went on
you
holiday.
kinda said it all.
Yeah, went on holiday to the Gold Coast and did some
It's
family
alright for
stuff, and it was amazing.
Apparently, teachers get paid more than chaplains.
Yeah,
so you went to Gold Coast?
Probably wives. Yeah, but anyway, no one wants to know about that. They want to know about reverse racism and why
it a real
it's a thing or isn't a thing. And is white privilege a thing?
I mean, because like on the
why are we talking about this? I guess it's Waitangi Day.
It's Waitangi Day. Spoken about white privilege.
Trying to
Waitangi
take
Day.
the white out of Waitangi.
Yeah. Or put the white. No,
The
the white.
white
was-
in white. It's already in.
in
The
there.
white is already in Waitangi.
Yeah.
So that's the
Anyway,
question.
making it tangier. So we're and like because obviously like there is obviously racism in the world. You hear a lot of it in America as well, and it's international. It's like you look into any culture, and there is like a deep seated like kind of racism to a different culture.
Well, it has to be international in that sense, right?
Yeah,
By
but
its
like,
nature, yeah.
but like internationally, it's not the same. It's like, in America there's black versus white. In like, maybe China there's a different type of racism.
Against the Japanese.
So there's lots of different. There's always racism somewhere. But like the main one we hear about is like black versus white, because there's obviously the slave trade, there's the apartheid in Africa, and then there's ongoing racism we hear about in America, between black and white people.
Certainly. So I think before we go any further, it would be good to say we recognise that all of this has happened. We recognise history, and the truth that racism is a real thing, and that for a large part of racism in the world, white people have been to blame. And using white people in a very loose term there, but especially, I guess, stemming from English and European settlement of the world. It's interesting. I was talking to another Dutch guy, yesterday, and he was like, "Well, interesting talking about how the Dutch actually we could be all speaking Dutch now if the Dutch had actually gone and planted their flag in all the places they went to." Abel Tasman came to New Zealand before James Cook, who was English, and Abel Tasman was Dutch, and but he was too scared because he saw the Māori were already living there.
Pretty scary people.
Oh, man, pretty scary.
With the hackers and stuff like that.
And Australia as well. But if he had done, we'd probably be right now. We'd be like, and I'd
be like, what?
Speaking Dutch, But anyway,
I just want to point out, it's not as black and white as it all seems. And this hence comes in this term reverse racism, and because and like institutional racism and stuff like that. And there was like you hear about these things all the time, and I don't want to deny that they're not happening, because there is racism everywhere, as I just said. But like, I think sometimes the way we tackle racism isn't the right way to tackle racism. So you hear, white people can't be racist because they've had a privileged upbringing, or because
black people can't be racist.
Oh yeah, you can't be racist to white people.
That's right.
Because they're the people in power, so therefore they're doing the oppressing. Therefore, you can't be racist to them, which is quite a racist thing to say. If we look at the definition of racism being judging a person or a group of people based solely on the colour of their skin, or where they're from.
That's the thing. It's like that's exactly what we need to remember in any case when we're talking about making broad definitions of people, Because exactly as Dom said, if you're saying about white people, well, without even trying, just by the fact of being born white, they, you can't be racist to them, because in the rest of history they've been the racist ones. Well, it's that then you're saying that person, by being born, is essentially the nature of their person is racist, essentially. Therefore, you can't be racist to a racist. And calling all white people racist is racist. It doesn't matter what you dress it up and what you call it, and what modern terms and what modern ideologies you use to support the logic, but it's racism.
Yeah, and I think because there's different. This word racism has been confused. It's like you'll say something that's racist and it's not racist.
Exactly. Yeah. It might be a little bit like stereotypical or ignorant, maybe.
Yeah, or even just like I was telling you earlier, my sister-in-law went to Canada for a year, and she's a fully qualified teacher, but she wasn't allowed to get a job as a teacher there because she wasn't Canadian. Now that sounds like, oh, you're not Canadian, you can't work here. It's like, but no, it's the Canadian government is looking after the Canadian people, and therefore giving them. The kids are over there still.
The kids, yeah.
They always dab at me, so I always dab back. Anyway, looking after Canadian people, and therefore making sure they get a job over people that come to the country, which is it's just fine. It's, of course you do that for your own people, but I guess the problem with that mentality kind of comes in with this whole with the example of Waitangi Day, which has happened in America, it's happened in Australia. The native people have always been crushed by a European civilization, generally the English.
Yeah. It's interesting when you think about this as well, looking after your own first as far as countries go. And then you think about immigration. It's like, well, immigration, if you were to follow that racist logic, is essentially, it's just a process of a racist process, Because it's like, what are you doing? Well, you're making a decision about who can be let into your country based on where they're from, purely, because you're not taking into account the qualities of that person. For instance, my wife Laura is on a Malaysian passport because even though she's lived in New Zealand since she was 6, she's decided to keep her Malaysian passport because it's almost impossible to get back once you revoke it. Okay, and you can't have dual citizenship. And so she's been going through this whole thing of like, well, it's really hard when she travels because she has to get like pulled aside and had further questioning about, you know, why are you here, because there's been a bit of like unrest in the country and it's become more of a radical Islamic country by its government. And so it's really hard because it's like she feels like she's been, I guess, the victim essentially of racism, you know, even just at the airport and things like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I guess that might be another thing talking about immigration and racism. But
it's just talking about the different types of racism because like
we have like it's looking after your own first, right?
Yeah, so we have looking after our own first. You know, making sure that like no one bad comes into your country. It's like that. I mean, like you know, it's just as like if someone comes into your house wielding like an AK-47 and 2 machetes, you're like, actually, could you just stay outside, please?
Yeah.
You know, it's like because I'm black. It's like no, because you're wielding weapons and I don't think you're safe around my children. You know, so there's that, and there's like, but this on an immigration scale is because you come from a country where dangerous things are happening.
Yeah.
So it sounds like racism is like because you're from this country, it's like, all right, you're not allowed in. That sounds racist, but it's actually a different thing. And we hear people like Ben Shapiro and all these other commentators talking about like from a different standpoint of like, actually, you know, it's like free market. Like people say you can't get a Band-Aid with your because they're American. You can't get a plaster for your with your skin tone. It's like that's kind of racist. It's like it's also the free market. It's like you're going to produce something that the majority of the people in that country will buy, and the majority of that people in that country are this colour. Therefore,
so getting on to this question of privilege, because I know that you were talking about this a lot before, and we're kind of running out of time in this podcast. But essentially, it's like people are made to feel bad for the privilege that they have, right? So saying, well, you're white, you know, like talking to me and be like, you're white, and therefore you have a privilege. You're born with a privilege. And it's like, then what? And then so it's like, should I feel bad for that? And if so, how does that help the whole situation? How does me feeling bad and guilty for the fact that I'm white help the situation? And especially thinking about this in the context of Waitangi Day for all those who are in New Zealand, is thinking we have this history which isn't necessarily so pretty. The Treaty of Waitangi itself was kind of somewhat of an act of deception. You know, it was kind of like, look at us so graciously making this move to you know, join in a partnership with the Māori, but in fact the two translations of the treaties were different, and I don't know all the details around whether that was how intentional that was, but let's just assume it was intentional, and so it's not very pretty. Okay, so one option we have is to say this is terrible, we should mourn this day, just like we should say this is terrible that there's been a lot of terrible things that white people have done in history, therefore let's, you know, throw the baby out with the bathwater. Let's go back, let's overthrow the government, let's go back to what we have. But then it's like, okay, do you live in New Zealand? Are you a Kiwi? Do you enjoy, and do you know and love New Zealand as your country, and are you proud about certain things about it? Well, I think most people would say yes.
Yeah.
Then it's like, well then, if you were to say like, well then we have to completely throw out this whole history, that's like chopping off the same branch that you're you know, sitting on.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, because it's like that's like historical racism, which there's nothing we can do about. It's happened, and now, but what we can deal with is the like, you know, the racism or the privilege that we have in front of us. And you know, in a lot of situations, especially like in America and these New Zealand and Australia, maybe there is a privilege that white people typically have. I think the solution to this isn't to say, okay, I'm just gonna like. There's this video that goes around. It's like, you know, everyone takes a step forward every time you get asked a question. It's
That's
like,
right,
you know,
yeah.
And I hate that video because it doesn't do anything except make everyone feel like crap. Like you either feel crap because you have no privilege, or you feel like crap because you have more privilege than everyone else. Everyone feels crap. Okay, now we've worked out that everyone, you know, I'm glad you feel crap and I feel crap. So, but like I think what we should be doing is, you know, saying, you know, okay, it is good in the sense that it makes you aware of like, actually I am pretty privileged. You know, I live in a country where I can practice my religion without being killed. That's a privilege. I have a job which means I can afford to rent an apartment in the city. That's a privilege.
I'm part of a culture where, you know, the dignity of human life is respected.
Yeah, yeah.
Even, you know, if you're from a Māori culture, you can say, you know, you have the privilege of coming from a culture that shows a real dignity and respect, you know, for people's mana and for people's dignity. So it's the small things like that.
And I think so it's recognizing that and being grateful for it and allowing that gratefulness to like come into the rest of your life. Because I think the problem with privilege is when people deny that they have it when they do. So if like
that doesn't help the situation at all.
Like a person who's like a CEO of a massive company and a millionaire and says, I got here all by myself.
Yeah.
And it's like, at what point were you all by yourself? It's like, did you teach yourself? No, you had teachers. Did you feed yourself when you were a child? Yeah. You know, when you came out of the womb, you just went straight into school and you started running a company. So no, you have to be, you know, be grateful for the people around you.
And the people whose shoulders you're standing on.
Exactly. So there's always your parents, their parents, and that's your genetic history. There is, you know, your education, so that's your teachers, and your chaplains. Now, and you know, doctors that have looked after you when you're ill, and people that gave you an opportunity, and be grateful for those opportunities, and don't just take them for granted. I think that's the solution to this white privilege, and I think it tackles a lot of racism in a sense. Like if you realize, actually, I got here because of that person, not because of that race. You know, I got here, you know, not because I'm a black person or because they're a black person or they're a white person or I'm a white person, but because of the goodness of their hearts.
Yeah. And I guess that's the thing with, let's just say, if you're talking about privilege, all right, use an analogy. You're privileged because you were born into wealth, all right? What is the solution to overcoming the discrepancy in privilege, right? If you're born into wealth, the solution is not to be like, oh, I've got all this money, but I'm not going to use it, because that would be ridiculous and that would be a bad use of showing I'm privileged. No, instead, use that wealth for the betterment of others, right?
Yeah.
So use the money that you have to help those who don't have the money.
Exactly.
Instead of saying, I'm not going to use it. Now, if we can make that as an analogy for white privilege and say, well, what's the solution to overcoming white privilege? It's not saying, you have privilege, therefore don't use it. Well, surely isn't it more like the money thing where it's like, no, if you feel like you have a privilege, then you should use it to other people's advantage. Okay, and this is where I have confidence in giving this podcast as a white male about white privilege. Is like, you know, we are called, and especially as Catholics and Christians, we are called to use our God-given talents, and this is where, in a sense, it's not about like looking at people as colorless and not seeing race. Well, that's not the solution either, because then you're just whitewashing people, and you're just trying to bring everyone down to this common denominator and taking away the beautiful diversity that God's created in us. So I guess what we could say is, as you said before, John, like the solution to overcoming privilege is gratitude for what you have, and that gratitude needs to manifest into some kind of action.
Yes. Boom. There you go. You said it. We got it. Yeah, it's about being aware of all the gifts that you've been given through your family and friends.
Yeah.
Through your God-given gifts. If you're particularly good at music or something like that, always offer it back up. You know, you can look at two ways. Like, oh, it's just a coincidence, or it's a blessing. If it's a blessing, then you need to give thanks for it. And I think, you know, that's one of the greatest things about Christianity is you always have someone to thank.
That's right.
And I think giving thanks doesn't just make you feel good, it makes everybody else feel good and validated. And so, like, if someone did something for you, be it something very small, they didn't even think about it, just turn to them and say, you know what, thanks. And that's how we take away this egotism, which I think is what is actually this white privilege thing is tackling. It's like your big ego is getting in the way of realizing there's humans here.
Exactly.
So, yeah. Let us be grateful.
Look beyond yourself.
Look beyond ourselves.
Use your privilege to someone else's advantage who is not privileged.
Yeah.
And most importantly, keep it Catholic. It's been a pleasure being back on this podcast.
Yeah, getting back at it.
We'll do more podcasts this year when we get a bit of time.
Definitely.
But yeah, please give Shana a warm welcome as well. We may even have a website up and running this year. In fact, we do. GroryandChat.com.
Yes. Check it out. God bless. Hey guys, thanks for watching the podcast. I've got good news. It just got a whole lot easier to search for us online.
All you got to do is search Gregorian Chat into YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, iTunes, and Player FM for those who are on Android.
Don't forget to share, like, and subscribe. See you later. God bless.